There's a 70% decrease in the number of Canadians that are anticipating buying their first home in the next 5 years, whether it's prices increasing or prices decreasing, interest rates increasing. Generally, all of the market dynamics are showing that people aren't looking to buy just yet. And the ultimate one to focus on is that 4 million Canadians expect to be forever renters. And as a small landlord, as an investor, you need to think about that even with rising costs, even with the cost of everything going up these days, there is still a huge opportunity right now and an even bigger one in the long term as immigration kicks back in, as these forever renters decide to stay in the market longer, that there's a huge need for big private landlords to fill. And as small investors, as small landlords, we can all jump in, help out with a dire need for housing, but also capitalize on those forever renters.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Channel. I am Adam J.D. Martin, and today I've got Hart from RentPanda here to talk about 3 rental trends that we should be looking out for. And today we're going to be focusing on Ontario specifically. So Hart, what are these 3 trends we got to be looking out for?
Thanks for the intro, Adam. And the first trend is that generation rent is growing. You know, we're seeing a lot of market trends shifting after we're coming out of the pandemic, but really, the trend that is here to stay is that people are renting longer, and people are starting to forego the idea and the age-old idea of homeownership being the ultimate goal. So there's actually some numbers lately that have come out that show that 29% of Canadians have no plans for homeownership, which is up almost 8% from 3 years ago, a dramatic change in people's perceptions of what they want in life and what they're going to aspire to. There's a 70% decrease in the number of Canadians that are anticipating buying their first home in the next 5 years, whether it's prices increasing or prices decreasing, interest rates increasing. Generally, all of the market dynamics are showing that people aren't looking to buy just yet. And the ultimate one to focus on is that 4 million Canadians expect to be forever renters. And as a small landlord, as an investor, you need to think about that even with rising costs, even with the cost of everything going up these days, there is still a huge opportunity right now and an even bigger one in the long term as immigration kicks back in, as these forever renters decide to stay in the market longer, that there's a huge need for big private landlords to fill. And as small investors, as small landlords, we can all jump in, help out with a dire need for housing, but also capitalize on those forever renters.
Yeah, that's an exciting trend to be watching, right? Because as a real estate investor, I know there's been some changing sentiments over the past, even last 7-8 months, right? I mean, we saw some very high price points and markets generally all trending up and to the right for the last few years. And here we are now after some of those peak prices. I've been studying the markets very closely, and in my markets, prices have been falling roughly 8% per month for the last few months. So we've seen major corrections. And what that, of course, does is actually spike rental demand, right? If you see capital starting to exit the market, you see less liquidity around to play with, interest rates rising, inflation high, you start seeing a lack of demand for the actual supply that's there on the market. And that's where you get a peak rental market. So as a real estate investor, these are trends we're definitely interested in.
Yeah, for sure. And even with that peak market, it's here to stay for a long time. And, you know, young millennials are starting to look at alternative housing solutions. And even if they do move into the housing market, their first home may be a house hack or even an investment property or a cottage. So the typical 1950s, 1960s idea of home ownership being the pinnacle of success is really starting to fall to the wayside. So the second trend that we're seeing is that marketplaces are flooded with desperate renters. And this is a dire situation, like you've said, when there's high pressure on the rental market. Obviously, everyone is clamoring for the same dwindling supply. And what we're seeing is that these marketplaces like RentPanda, like Facebook Marketplace, like rentals.ca, like Kijiji, are seeing massive amounts of inquiries. So Facebook Marketplace, as an example, we're seeing over 120 inquiries coming within the first 72 hours of posting. And so as a landlord, that's a lot of messages to deal with. That's a lot of, is it still available, being hammered into your inbox. And it's hard to disseminate, a good tenant from a bad tenant with so much volume coming through. And oftentimes it can be very, very overwhelming for the small landlord in specific who's trying to do their landlord job on the side of a full-time job. With that, tenants don't know how to set themselves apart or what process to follow. So on Facebook Marketplace, as an example, people think that hitting that "is it still available" button is an appropriate inquiry into a rental. And a lot of people, landlords, will not respond to it. And people are losing out on homes, and landlords may actually be losing out on really good quality applicants who just are hitting that "is it still available" button that Facebook has taught us to hit. And so outlining a clear process for tenants as part of your rental ad, making sure you communicate with everyone in a really efficient way, that's becoming more and more important for the small landlord who's going to see success. But it's a really time-consuming process. And so the third thing here is that landlords are spending an average of 9.5 hours per listing just messaging people and setting up showings, which is a huge amount of time, which wasn't the case when you only had 10 or 20 inquiries. And so dealing with that massive inquiries across multiple platforms is becoming incredibly overwhelming and time-consuming. So really the key takeaway here for small landlords is build your systems, have your screening in place, and make sure that you know how to efficiently vet tenants from day one, or else you're going to get overloaded the minute that ad goes up.
Yeah, I can personally attest to this. The last time I posted an advertisement for a rental unit, I had over 300 responses, and that is actually an indication as well for a landlord, if you're getting these types of responses, that your market is running high on demand. And so instantly what I did was actually took the ad down and reposted it at a new rate, because if you have 300 interested parties, you're probably not at the equilibrium price for market rent. So there's a long way to go up. So that's a key tip too for anybody that is getting overwhelmed with these types of asks from your ads. It is obviously an indication that your ad is working well. So maybe don't change the copy, but think about changing the price.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as much as the price is going to definitely bring down that number of applicants, what we also see is that 60-70% of those "is it still available" messages are going to end up without any conversion into a future message or even a showing. And so, finding a tool like a screening tool, like a digital application, even a Google form, or, RentPanda screening tool and applications, that's the way to just really quickly and easily bang out a bunch of messages to all 120 of those messages, or all 300 that did message you. Because from that 300, you're probably only going to get 40 or 50 people who actually end up responding to your message back.
Yeah, and I fully agree. Like, I wish I had been using something like RentPanda in the past, because going through this manually, or even paying somebody to go through it manually, is definitely an arduous task, and it is honestly a waste of time, because it is true that you need to interview a lot of people to get to a great candidate. But I don't know if you can interview 300 people. And like you mentioned, maybe only 50 of those are actually serious or qualified by the time that you get to them. But we're certainly not going to be responding to all 300, right? It's just not feasible. And I will also absolutely put the rubber stamp on the fact that I'm not replying to "is this still available," right? Ever. I'm never going to send a response to that. And to your point, I am missing business by not responding to those as well. Like, inside those messages, there was one, AAA level tenant that I'm going to just kind of pass over for that fact.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, the intricacy and the detail that people are putting in their messages, the disparity between them is growing. You have a lot of people just writing "is it still available?" And then you have those AAA tenants who are starting to understand what it takes to set themselves apart, writing really lengthy outlines of who they are. A lot of landlords will see that as, people giving sob stories, which obviously you need to screen for, but it still takes a lot of time to read through everyone's, messages, to disseminate who's good from who's bad. And so it's so important that if you are a landlord that's still doing it yourself, that hasn't hired it out just yet, that you have systems for yourself in place, or else you're going to be spending that 9.5 hours on your phone responding to Facebook messages and just, having a bad time doing it.
Yeah, and I think it should also be noted here that if somebody's being, a ninja tenant and watching these videos for the purposes of securing a rental, maybe they use your software or a platform like it to find rentals. Like, do send the message, right? Do write almost like a cover letter in your application, because me understanding a little bit more about your background, your story, and why you would like to come live in my asset is very important to me.
Yeah.
Like the work that goes into acquiring a building can't be understated. I mean, raising the capital, organizing the operations team to execute on the renovation, actually doing the renovation to make a beautiful, new piece of inventory for somebody to enjoy. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And it's not, nobody should take it lightly, whether it's the tenant or the landlord. Like, this is actually important and more than likely represents an asset worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the tenant will become the steward of that asset.
For sure. And we often talk about it with small landlords who are just entering into the industry for the first time as job applications. And so treat yourself like an employer, write a really good job application, which is your listing, and vet people in the same way that you would vet, a top tier applicant for, a management position. Because like you just said, they are going to be in control of your asset for the majority of the time that they're there. And so it's incredibly important, whether it's dating or employment searches or landlord searches, matchmaking is really the key here.
Yeah, I love that. And was there a third insight as well that we need to look out for?
There was, yeah. And, even in these competitive markets, even when landlords think they have the pick of the litter, the third trend here is really that great tenants, those AAA tenants, are demanding more, but they're also willing to pay more. And that's like upwards of 10 to 20% above market rent for the right place. So to throw some facts at you, 65% of tenants are now looking for pet-friendly homes. And not only is that, landlords who aren't saying no pets and, not doing illegal things, but doing things to, screen people out in the ad, they're looking for places that are truly pet-friendly. So places that have fully fenced yards, that have dog parks nearby, that have, it written in the description that they're open to pets, that they love pets. And that's also a good way to screen people who don't have, or who have pets, that if you don't want pets, because saying you're open to pets kind of allows people to reveal that they do have pets without feeling discriminated against. But these AAA tenants typically have pets. We're seeing this across the province. 40% of tenants will only rent a place with in-suite laundry these days. So for those duplex conversions, it's so important to have laundry in both units. Yes, if you're in the student market, if you're in a lower end market, then you can still have shared laundry. You can still have the laundromat down the street in your Toronto rental. But for a lot of those key markets, those B markets with duplex conversions, even triplex conversions, in-suite laundry is becoming more and more important. And then also businesses are starting to rent out homes for their employees more and more, and they're looking for really high quality rentals. And this is primarily the case in a lot of these B markets that we operate in, where traditional industries like quick serve restaurants are bringing in new immigrants to work in their restaurants or in their establishments. And those new immigrants can't find housing in this type of competitive market. And so, Tim Hortons, McDonald's, even Air Canada, Bombardier, we've worked with them all to put their employees in homes that they've leased. And Tim Hortons is looking for a high quality home with all of the amenities, with all of the services, with lawn and snow taken care of by the landlord professionally. And so if you do want those, corporations to be renting your home at top prices, again, willing to pay 10, 20% above market value, you really want to set yourself apart by including all of those amenities. And then the last little tidbit here is that these tenants who are AAA tenants also know their rights. So we always say this to landlords, new or old, but know your rights, read the RTA, have a paralegal who you can go to, but make sure that you are educated as a landlord. Even if you're an amateur landlord that's doing it on the side, education about your rights and the tenant's rights is extremely important.
Yeah, I think those are all fantastic tips. And luckily technology and, just technology really is on our side here. I mean, in-suite laundry now is so much more accessible when we've got, apartment size refrigerators, we've got apartment size stoves, we've got apartment size stackable laundry units that you're able to put in every unit, and they come with a bit of a price tag. But there's ways to find them for cheaper, and it always pays off if you can grab a AAA tenant. And of course, they're going to know their rights, and of course they know that they know their rights, but they also have the ability to not put you in a position for them to have to use their rights against you, right? If you're grabbing a AAA tenant, the idea is that they're more than likely going to pay on time, and if they're paying a 20% premium for some of those amenities, that's even better. And why wouldn't you furnish your your rentals for the best person possible, right? You want the highest and best use out of your building. That's what's going to get you the best return. It's also what's going to give you the headspace to go and buy more units. Okay. If you're buying the worst building, you're putting in, you know, a lesser quality tenant because you've decided not to go this route. It's going to result in more challenges and more problems. And that data, right? You're going to be able to see that type of thing by using things like RentPanda, right? It's very simple to use tools like this, and, you know, really affordable in terms of what it can net you in terms of bottom line on a new project. So Hart, I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing these insights for 3 things that investors need to look out for. And I know I absolutely resonate with everything you talked about today. And it's very insightful to hear that so many people are going to be demanding rentals, and particularly demanding them over the long term. We're entering a buying season. Okay. I think it's a very unique opportunity. So if you guys aren't already, please follow RentPanda. Please get after it. Go message Hart, figure out what you guys need to know. There's lots of information available on their services. So please go follow them and start using tools so you can better improve your business. And if you haven't already, throw us a subscription. Come on, subscribe and like this thing already, would you? And we'll see you on the next video, where Hart's actually going to provide us with some additional tips that you guys are going to need to know if you want to max those profits. Thanks, guys.